In this homework video, you are going to learn how to use a line plot, how to display data using a line plot. So at this point, you should have your notebook open. You should be putting down line plots as the title of your homework, and then you should putting the date in the corner. So we know that there are two types of data that you might display when you're working with statistics. The first one is categorical data. So categorical data is when whatever you're counting falls into groups. So like how many people have a red backpack versus a green backpack. You're still counting up people, but the categories are groups. How many people have dogs, how many people have cats, how many people have birds, etc. Numerical data is whenever what you're counting has a quantity. How tall is everyone? You'll take everyone's height. How heavy is everyone's backpacks? You'll get a bunch of numbers. You can use a line plot with either type of data, but we're going to be focusing on using a line plot with numerical data. Let's see how to set that up next. So when you're setting up the scale on a line plot, you want to always start your first number either at the minimum of the data, meaning the smallest number that you need to graph, or slightly below it if you want to leave room for later. Similarly, you need to count all the way up to the maximum or slightly above it, so that is the highest number in your data set or slightly above. And you don't have to count by ones, although often we do with a line plot, but whatever you count by, it does need to be consistent, meaning you have to do the same thing the entire time. So the first one has a scale of 1, goes up by 1 each time, doesn't skip anything, it is the same spacing between the numbers. This one's good. The second one, now we're jumping 2 spaces between the new numbers, and the numbers themselves are going up by 5s. It's a little bit more confusing, but totally allowed because it's consistent. We're going by 5 every 2 spaces. Absolutely fine. The last one, we start off going up by 1s. We're looking good. And then it starts going up by 2s. Now this is not consistent. If they'd continued going up by 1, that would be fine. If we'd gone by 2s the entire time, that would also be fine. As it is, this is not okay. Not consistent. To fix it, we could just change the beginning of the scale so that it starts at a 0 here. So it goes 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Now it's consistently going up by 2s. So now it's okay. You should leave it as the non-consistent example in your notes. So now let's do an example of making a line plot. So here we have a situation where we've counted up the number of brothers and sisters that a certain group of kids have. So for our scale, we're going to be looking at these numbers. And it looks pretty simple just to count by 1, starting at 0 and ending at 4. So once I've drawn my numbers in, making sure they're evenly scaled, I'm going to write down my label for the graph. So this is number of siblings, meaning brothers and sisters. And then I'm going to add in X's, or sometimes people use dots, for the number of children in each group. So there's 2 students that have no brothers and sisters. There's 3 that have 1. Notice as I'm doing this how I am making sure that each X is the same width. That's exactly the height of one grid square. Then I'll keep going. So 2 was up at 5. 3 only had 2, and 4 has 1. Also notice that I've drawn my numbers on the lines instead of on the spaces. So my numbers are right on the lines, and my X's are right on the lines as well. Right, so my X's go straight down those lines. This is a good habit for later types of graphs that we're going to draw. So next, we're going to do another example, and this time I would like you to pause the video and try and make this line plot on your own. If you get stuck, you think you're not doing it right, then go ahead and press play and watch and see how I do it. Otherwise, make the whole thing and then press play to see how I did it and correct yours if you did it wrong. Press pause now. All right, now I'm going to quickly show how I made this line plot. First, I found what the minimum and maximum of the data were to decide how big I needed to be. So that was my smallest number, and then my biggest number was the 42. There were a couple of them. So I'm going to draw my line, and I'm going to label from 25 up to 42. I chose to scale by ones. If you chose to go by something bigger, that's fine. All of your X's might just not fall exactly on a line. You might have to do an X in between some lines, and that's okay. So now I'm going to add on the points. So there was 125, so I put an X on the 25. There is a 26, so I put an X there. The 30 gets an X, 42, 38, 29, another 30, so this one gets an X on top, another 25, another 42, and a 40. So your final line plot should look like this. If you did a different scale, then it might look slightly different, but it should have the same general shape. And then make sure that you have labeled your graph. So this was counting minutes spent on homework. So if you think that perhaps the way you did the graph wasn't correct, then you should redo it my way. If you think your graph works, then leave it and maybe make any small changes that you need to. All right, so now we've reached the end of the video. That means that you have the practice problem that you're going to do on your own, and then we're going to check it tomorrow in class. So in this problem, I've given you a table we're pretending that I measured some students and I recorded their heights. 4 of them were 60 inches tall, 3 of them were 61 inches tall, 3 of them were 63 inches tall, and 1 of them was 67 inches tall. And then I had a student graph the data, but the student made a mistake. So you need to look at the graph and you need to decide what is the mistake in the scale. And then you need to redraw the graph so that it is correct. Finish this now. Pause so that you can copy down the needed information, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. Good luck.